Focus your attention. What do you see?
Giant.
Recently, I got to play the first couple of hours of Cronos: The New Dawn, and I came away feeling unsure of whether I'd actually enjoyed my time with it or not. It's not a bad game by any stretch, but there were a couple of frustrating features that really didn't sit well with me. And so, in this video, Eurogamer's Ian Higton, will be telling you about the 4 things I liked about Cronos and the 2 things that I absolutely did not. Let's kick things off with the good, starting with the atmosphere. Cronos is a dark, moody game with a deliciously creepy ambiance that has definite shades of Returnal to it. This is especially true for the player character known as the Traveller, whose spacesuit muffled voice sounds incredibly similar to Celine's during the moments when they ponder out loud about their predicament.
Traveler ND3576. Initiating the travel log. Triangulating the fallen predecessor's last known location.
The sound design is cracking here, with sci-fi bleeps, bloops and whirs coming from otherworldly machinery, metallic creaks and crunches ring out as you stomp through the world, monstrous squelches and screams erupt from the merging mutants, and all of this is accompanied by an anxiety-inducing, heartbeat-like pulse that plays out in the background. This combined with some beautifully haunting scenery that goes from dilapidated, crumbling apartment blocks and dusty shop interiors frozen in time by an apocalypse, through to haunting caverns and canyons with walls made out of twisted mounds of human flesh and back again, gives the game a tone that's almost as unique as the slightly penisy design of the Traveller's helmet. Colours-wise, it's all fairly drab and muted, but this suits the hopeless, humanity's lost tone down to a T. The only real problem I had with the level design itself was that a large majority of the props were indestructible. Bottles, glass, boxes. Unless it was specifically designed to be broken for gameplay purposes, everything stayed static. But I think that might just be a me problem because I really do love smashing things. One of the things that made Returnal one of my favourite PS5 games of all time had to be the underlying mystery behind the whole story. Where was Celine? Why was she here? What was she supposed to be doing? And why was her childhood house on an alien planet? This narrative got its claws into me and wouldn't let me go until I'd platinumed the game, and Cronos looks like it might have a story that'll be just as compelling to dig into. At the very start of the game, the Traveller wakes up inside something called a sarcophagus, and an onboard computer runs them through a Rorschach test, which you, the player, has to answer. Do you see a dog, or do you see a devil? That kind of thing. But what's this test for? Do your answers have any effect on the actual gameplay? The first couple of hours doesn't give you an answer to any of these questions. Instead, everything is kept quite mysterious and obscure. You know you're looking for something called a predecessor, but why? What for? And who are they? Well, after a while, you find out, and they're another Traveller, just like you. Except not completely like you, because this one is dead. But who was this predecessor? Could they be a Returnal-style time-travel-y clone? And if they are, does this mean that you're the only piece of humanity left, and it's up to you to rebuild the human race by trying to succeed where your past selves failed? This Traveller has a different number on their suit to yours though, 3,500 compared to your 3,576. Maybe future humans just label each suit with a different number and there's a bunch of people queuing up to be Travellers somewhere in the distant apocalypse. Or maybe Travellers are some kind of mass-produced humanoid tool rather than real people. But then if that's true, why is this one bleeding? These are all questions I'm dying to know the answer to, and finding out the truth about who is behind that helmet will probably be the main driving force that pushes me through to the end of the game.
You never reached him. I will carry on where you left off. The vocation continues.
Combat in Cronos is pretty tough, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that ammo is super scarce, and that the monsters take a lot of it to put down. You can do a heavy Dead Space style melee swing with your fists if you run out of bullets, but you do stand to take a lot of damage with this approach, so it's very much not advisable to do unless it's an emergency. At this point, all my previous experience with survival horror games told me to just run past enemies and conserve ammo, which worked wonders because you can often reach points where the monsters will stop following you. Brilliant, I thought. Very clever, Ian. You escaped and saved ammo too. Well done. Pat yourself on the back. But what I hadn't factored into my plans was Cronos' merging mechanic, which is probably the only truly unique idea in the game. And to be fair, it's awesome. It finally made me feel some fear, and it left me actually having to do a thinking, rather than just relying on survival horror muscle memory. You see, if you down a monster in Cronos, their bodies will stay on the floor until you burn them to ash, something that is possible to do using nearby explosive containers or a flame effect from your suit, which at first is limited to one use only before you have to recharge it. If you don't burn these bodies, then there is a big chance that other monsters will come along and merge with that dead flesh, evolving into bigger, spikier, and more vicious beasts than they were before. Which is something I realised to my detriment when I returned to a previously explored area a little later and found out that most of the monsters that I had dodged had merged with the ones that I'd killed, making that section even deadlier than it was before. This mechanic then is going to create a big balancing act between conserving ammo and resources and not potentially screwing yourself later on. And it rewrote the way that I had to think about enemy encounters. All of a sudden, I realised that running away wasn't the safest option anymore, and that knowledge terrified me.
Such is our calling.
And the final thing that I really liked about Cronos was its collectibles. And no, I'm not talking about the masses of written notes and audio logs that you can find in every other game of this type. Oh no, they are there, of course, but what I'm talking about specifically here are the cats. Yes, that's right, not only does Cronos have collectible cats, but you can even pet them too. The first cat was fairly easy to find, but then I discovered a second one behind a locked door that needed a special item and a bit of backtracking to get through. This, plus the fact that the details of each cat I found were added to an in-game database, strongly suggested to me that there will be plenty more cats hidden throughout the game. As you might have gathered by now, Cronos is fairly shameless when it comes to borrowing the majority of its gameplay mechanics from other well-established survival horror titles. Normally this wouldn't be too much of a bad thing, if kept in check. I mean, what game doesn't lift at least a couple of successful design decisions from other sources? In Cronos, however, it felt like I'd seen pretty much everything that it had to offer before, aside from the merging mechanic. There's time manipulation puzzles, fuse puzzles, doors that are locked until you find a 3-digit code on a note somewhere, and so on. There's the massive Dead Space influence that's impossible to gloss over too, from the big booted bonus box stomping and the twisted once-human enemies that have a distinct necromorphy vibe to them, through to the wall-mounted lockers that store health, ammo and crafting components, and even the gravity boot-style jumping mechanic that we've seen in recent gameplay trailers but didn't get to experience during our hands-on session. Then there's a big similarity to the Resident Evil games too. Cronos' Resi-style safe rooms come complete with one of those magical item lockers for storing your unwanted items in. And hell, this may be a bit of a stretch, but I couldn't stop thinking about the way that the Traveller runs around holding their pistol in 2 hands, and how it looks eerily similar to the way that Leon Kennedy does it in the Resident Evil 2 remake. Even the dilapidated interiors of the apartment complex we explored near the end of the demo felt like something ripped straight out of Bloober Team's recent Silent Hill 2 remake. And it's not just visual similarities either. I could predict when enemy encounters and jump scares were about to happen. It was easy to spot when I'd wandered into an arena that was about to host a battle against multiple enemies, and it was fairly obvious when I was moving through an area where monsters probably weren't going to spawn at all. This obviously robbed the game of a lot of potential scares and tension, replacing them with a kind of blasé approach to my exploration, which caused me to focus even harder on the massive frustration that I'll cover in my next point. Long story short then, some things are only scary the first few times you experience them. That means if you've never played a horror game before, Cronos will make you absolutely shit yourself. But if you're an avid fan of the horror game genre like I am, well, let's just say that if the gameplay doesn't start throwing in more fresh ideas like the merging mechanic after the first couple of hours, Cronos will be a one, done, and forget you've ever played it kind of game, which would be a massive shame indeed.
Such is our calling.
Okay, so what about that massive frustration I mentioned? Well, it revolves around another mechanic borrowed from Resident Evil games, and that is inventory management. Inventory management has always been a pet peeve of mine, but it's made a little bit more interesting in Resi thanks to the briefcase slots and the way you can shift items around. But in Cronos, it is an absolute nightmare that sucks the fun out of the experience in a variety of ways. The major way it affects the gameplay negatively comes from the fact that you have to hold certain crafting materials like shell patches, aka medkits, in your very limited inventory space, which is also shared with guns, ammo, and quest items. Here's the annoying part though: you want to craft some new ammo or a new medkit when you've got a full inventory? Tough. You can't. Instead, you get a pop-up text box that tells you your inventory is full. So if you're in the middle of a fight and you're out of ammo or health, you're basically dead because the monsters don't stop attacking you while you're going through your inventory, trying to decide what to drop just so you can make some room to craft some gun food. It's very annoying, but the thing that really wound me up was in a section where I had to fight my way to the top of an apartment complex in order to find a tiny little key. And you know what happened when I finally got up there? I couldn't pick up the tiny little key because my inventory was full of things I didn't want to lose, like my guns, health kits, and ammo. You know, because this is a survival horror game and all of those things are super scarce. So instead of, I don't know, the Traveller just holding the key in their hand for 5 minutes, I had to go all the way back down to the bottom of the now empty complex to find a safe room, store one of my guns in there, and then walk all the way back up to the top again just so I could fit this tiny little key into the same pocket that once held a massive gun. I'm sorry, but that's nonsense. In my opinion, quest items shouldn't take up inventory space anyway, but tiny little keys on a tiny little keyring absolutely shouldn't take up the same amount of space as a bloody shotgun. I mean, come on. You can use upgrade stations to increase the amount of inventory spaces from the starting number of 6 though, but the suit upgrade cores you need to do this with are very rare, and when you're playing a horror game where the ammo is severely limited, your first instinct will be to spend your upgrade points on health or firepower or whatever makes things do a dead as quickly as possible. No one should be going into a horror game worrying about how many new pockets they need to sew onto their spacesuits just so they can craft some ammo without the game shouting at them. I'm sorry, but it's just nonsense, and as much as I enjoyed the rest of the game, this bit really grated on me for a large portion of my playtime.
The path was destroyed by the anomaly. The elevator downstairs must be the only way up.
So there you go, that's Cronos, a decent looking, well presented survival horror game that's lacking in both originality and pocket space. As I mentioned earlier, I do hope the rest of the game picks up a bit, because the first couple of hours that I played didn't really leave me itching to play more, despite its mysterious storyline. There is a chance that the early chapters are just a bit of a slow burn though, especially as a recently released chunk of gameplay shows off a few more mechanics and weapons that I didn't get to use. But either way, with an October release date, there is still time for Bloober to sort out that shitty inventory system, and it'll be a much better game if it does.
All hope abandon ye who enter here.
Want to boost your game collection and get a great selection of titles every month? Well, now you can with Humble Choice. Every month you get a hand-picked mix of awesome PC games, and this month's lineup is now live. Running through to August the 5th, you can grab Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, Demon Ex Machina, Death's Door, Cat Quest 3, and much more. Whether you're building your backlog or discovering something new, now is the perfect time to pick up these fan favourites. And don't forget that every purchase helps a good cause, with this month's Humble Choice membership supporting Covenant House. Get a curated mix of PC games every month, all for just £8.99 a month. Skip a month or cancel any time, and know that 5% of your membership goes to charity. So if you love discovering great games and doing a little good while you're at it, check out Humble Choice today.